We are going to talk about a very controversial subject in today's video. Studio Series 86 Megatron. Why is that controversial? Why is this figure controversial? It's because back in 1986, when Transformers the movie came out, Megatron was accepted as a gun. He transforms into a Walter P-36. Unfortunately, because of American gun laws for toys and whatnot, Hasbro is hesitant or even reluctant to make any toys that transforms into a realistic looking gun. As those of you who may remember, back in the mid-2000s, Hasbro came out with a classic Megatron that transforms into a gun, but it looks more like a Nerf gun than an actual real-world weapon. So that being said, how did they address the issue where Studio Series 86 is all about the Transformers that was involved in that movie at the time? This is their answer. Before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to two groups. The first one I want to thank is Philanthro's Review. You can check out their YouTube channel online, and for them, what they've done for me today is they supplied most of these figures. The other group I want to give a shout out to is YAG Transformers BST. They are the one that is supplying me the knockoff G1 Megatron that you will be seeing later in this video. So let's go back into this review. As you can see, this Megatron is not by any stretch of the imagination something that Starscream can hold on to in that scene where the Decepticons invaded the Autobot space shuttle and killed off Brawn, Prowl, Ironhide, and Ratchet. But you can see in this tank that this is more or less what we have come to expect Megatron to be, a tank. Ever since G2, Generation 2, Megatron has assumed the form of a tank. Now, Optimus Prime, however, he's always been a cab-over truck, a semi-tractor. And that's because there are no laws against toy tractors. Now, you may notice something about this video, and I'm going to get this out of the way first. Some of the accessories were not loaned to us because it was used for another video. So you'll notice that this cannon that Megatron has in this tank mode doesn't belong to him. And that's the reason why. However, you'll notice that this cannon belonged to another toy, and I'll get into that other toy in a bit. So the first thing I want to say is both toys, by size comparison, they're very similar. Optimus Prime has always been about this, like, he's always been one of the larger Autobots. Same with Megatron, he's one of the larger Decepticons. However, one thing a lot of modern Transformers fans ask is, why is Megatron a gun? It doesn't make sense for Optimus Prime to be self-mobile, whereas Megatron always rely on another Decepticon to use him in his alt weapon mode. Now, for those of you who are into G1 and remember the G1 history, traditionally, when the Autobots first appeared back in 1984 along with their Decepticon counterparts, Autobots were always disguised as Earth vehicles, mainly wheeled vehicles, whereas Decepticons, they transform into communication devices such as like cassette tapes and a radio recorder like Soundwave, or weapons like the Seekers and of course Megatron. So that is actually one of the reasons why he was a gun back in the G1 cartoon. But Megatron also, for the sake of utility, it is far easier for him to concentrate his power into a small compact form where he can be used by another Decepticon under his command so that his full power can be focused into one smaller weapon. That was the other reasoning behind the fact that he's a gun. Optimus Prime, however, you'll notice that he's not a weapon per se, he's a vehicle. His purpose is to go around Earth incognito, transform into something that's non-threatening, something that's familiar. At the same time, he is able to haul Autobots in his trailer if he needs to. So that's actually the reason why people just can't accept, like for the diehard G1 fans, they cannot accept this as Megatron. What is the solution? I want to introduce everybody to this guy. This is New Age Romulus. This figure also is controversial. And the reason why is, and you'll see this in a minute when I transform all these guys into robot mode, is because when you transform him, yes, he looks almost like a spitting image of G1 Megatron. But compared to G1 Optimus Prime, or in this case, Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime, he falls a little short, and that's pun intended there. And you will see that in a minute. Now, I'm going to focus today on mainly just Megatron, even though Optimus Prime is here as a reference as to what you would expect had Megatron been this instead of a tank. But it is relevant because when you grow up, you expect these two characters to be at an equal level. While the robot mode for SS86 Megatron definitely delivers in that regard, his alt mode is not so much. The problem is, if you refer this toy back in the movies, like in a scene where he goes around and attack the Autobots, you will remember distinctly there is no tank aside from Blitzwing in that movie. So we will cover these in a moment here. Just for the sake of more comparisons, I want to show you the size of New Age Romulus to G1 Megatron. Now, this is what the fans were expecting. This is what the G1 fanboys grew up with. He was this mode in the cartoons up until the end of 1985, before the movie came out, where he became Galvatron when he was transformed by Unicron into a more powerful yet unstable persona. So why is it that this toy is so controversial? It's because in the 90s, the United States government had passed a toy gun law where toy makers are prohibited, or at the very least restricted, in selling toy weaponry that looks realistic, where the police will see it as a weapon and accidentally shoot a kid. So because of that, you'll see some toys, especially with the reissues and some knockoffs, they would have an orange cap on the barrel. Now, you'll probably ask, why does Romulus not have that orange cap? Very good question. And a lot of people speculate is because this is a third-party toy. It's made in China, where they have different toy gun laws, that there is no orange cap. And also, because this is a recent knockoff of the old toy, that also applies. There is no orange gun cap on the barrel. Now, when you look at the size of G1 Megatron and of course Romulus, they're very similar in size. G1 Megatron obviously is a little bigger than Romulus, and that's actually some foreshadowing here. When you compare this toy to Optimus Prime, in the G1 toy, Optimus Prime is slightly smaller than the gun mode. But as you can see, the gun is more or less of a realistic scale. It might be just a little smaller than the actual thing, but it is more or less that size. Fun fact, the G1 Megatron in North America is very different from the one in, say, Japan. In the Japanese version of Megatron, for G1 Megatron, there's a chamber here where you can load bullets, and the trigger actually propels the bullet to fire. And of course, because of gun laws that we had in North America, even back then, they neutered that feature. So anybody who has a G1 Megatron that they purchased in North America, they'll notice that when you take the chest apart, there's a mechanism, but it doesn't do anything. That is what that mechanism was for. It was designed to be a chamber where you can fire the projectile. New Age Romulus does not have that feature. It does not fire anything. In fact, the trigger for G1 Megatron, when you pull it, there's a spring-loaded mechanism where it brings the trigger back to the default position. New Age Romulus, however, does not have that mechanism built in. So once you pull the trigger back, you have to manually shift it back into position. So that's a major difference, another major difference between the original and the homage. Now, let's compare these robots, or these Transformers in robot form. All right, so as you can see, now we have the 3 Megatrons standing side by side. You'll notice that, again, I'm going to re-emphasize, we do not have the accessories for some of these guys. So I'm going to do a bare minimum just to focus on the robots in this review. Right now, right off the bat, you can see Studio Series 86 Megatron is at least a head taller than the other versions of Megatron. New Age Romulus, as you can see right now, he's substantially shorter, all right? And this is actually one of the other problems that the fans were complaining about. So if you're a tank Megatron guy, you would be saying, hey, why is he a gun? But however, if you got Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime, you have an idea that Studio Series 86 Megatron is supposed to stand head to head with Optimus Prime. Obviously, with New Age Romulus, you cannot do that due to the height. There's nothing you can do to extend the height of New Age Romulus. Mainly it's because of the fact that when this figure was designed, at the time, people were speculating that the Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime is going to be the same height as Earthrise Optimus Prime or any of the previous War for Cybertron versions of Optimus Prime, which they would go really well together at this height. But no, Hasbro decided to one-up the game by making the figures a little bigger and make it so that the leader class makes it stand out a lot more. It makes sense because when you think about it, right? Starscream is always smaller than Megatron, and Starscream is already a Voyager. And Voyagers nowadays, even though they're not as big as they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago, they're still substantial in size. So a Voyager would be roughly New Age Romulus size. It would not make sense for this guy to be the same size as New Age Romulus for that sole reason. And just for ha-has, I got G1 Megatron here. Now, do keep in mind that this guy is a knockoff. He is not the actual official version. So the QC is a little questionable. So as you can see in this case, you can see that the chest is not exactly opening properly. And that's of course due to the production specs not being up to snuff, right? But even as you can see, the original toy compared to New Age Romulus, they're very similar in size. This can be said about G1 Optimus Prime. He's just a little shorter than G1 Megatron. But the fact that, keep in mind that they did originally came from 2 different separate toy lines, they were not meant to stand head to head. However, because Studio Series 86 toys are meant to be a more premium, more of a collector's line, you will expect a little bit more detail to attention, such as Studio Series 86 Megatron as shown. I am going to show you another comparison where I will illustrate the reason why New Age Romulus is not looked upon as the replacement for Studio Series 86 Megatron. Mainly is not just because of the size, but the scale. So I will bring in Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime for everybody to look at and see the comparison here. All right, I'm back. So, as you can see, both Studio Series 86 figures, Megatron and Optimus Prime, they're about the same size, same height, same amount of bulk, and of course the same amount of details put into each of the toy. Paint level is the same, the amount of engineering, as you can see, was the same, and more importantly, very much like the movie and what the fans have demanded, both of these figures are about the same height. Megatron may be just a hair taller than Optimus Prime, but because of the antenna on the side of Optimus Prime, they're more or less, head to head. And you would expect that because these are the classic enemies, the two rivals in the Transformers the movie back in 1986. Fans would expect these to be the same stature, the same size, more or less the same characteristic and strength and abilities. Now we're going to look at New Age Romulus. I'm going to compare this guy with Megatron first, Studio Series 86 Megatron. As you can see, the two toys are nowhere near the same height. In fact, Studio Series 86 Megatron is clearly a head taller than New Age Romulus. So as you can see, they're not the same size. More importantly, they're not even the same bulk. So when you look at Studio Series 86 Megatron, he looks a lot beefier. All right, he looks like he's there to whoop Optimus Prime and don't have to think twice about it. Whereas New Age Romulus, he's clearly not in the same weight class as Studio Series 86. Now, I'm gonna put him right next to Studio Series Optimus Prime. So because of the fact that Optimus Prime is just slightly shorter than Megatron here, while he is comparable to New Age Romulus in size, Romulus would have to look up like this, and Optimus Prime would have to look down like this for them to see eye to eye during a battle scene. This is not what the fan wants, right? You expect the two leaders of the respective factions to be more or less equal. What you see here is not like they're not equal. Like this guy is clearly smaller. It's almost like he was shrunk down in the laundry. Optimus Prime here, he looks determined, confident. New Age Romulus, not so much. You stand this guy right next to him, you can clearly see that these two were designed with each other in mind on a drawing board at Hasbro. You can see that Optimus Prime has the right bulk, has the right strength. Studio Series 86 Megatron, even though he's a tank, he looks impressive. He's definitely the right size. And of course, you would recognize him for all the features. Like the leg, you have the gun part for Megatron, which you would see in Studio Series 86 Megatron. This is impressive because keep in mind, this is all made from the treads, not the pistol grip, right? The barrel, of course, is kind of a cheat, is a piece that you added on, whereas New Age Romulus, that is an integral part of the gun, right? There are parts and details to Megatron's body which suggest that it is a gun, but it is not. It's kind of a cheaty way of going through it. As you can see in the previous video, New Age Romulus' chest, that forms part of the gun body. This one mimics the gun's body, but is really just the front armor plate of the tank. Last but not least, this is also the part of Megatron that's iconic. You recognize his torso, where you have kind of like a Darth Vader control panel in the stomach. Both of these figures have them, but this one, when you look at it right away, you know that's Megatron. Fun fact, New Age Romulus, the cannon, even though it is smaller than Studio Series Megatron, you can actually kind of fit this cannon onto Megatron. Like so. This would complete his iconic look. He's always known to have that fusion cannon right next to him to blast any of the Autobots that stands in his way. So, how does this compare to other Studio Series 86 Transformers? Well, I happen to have Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus. Now, we all know Ultra Magnus is a bigger Transformer. He's always been the character that people literally look up to. But in this case, Hasbro did a good job conveying the size and the scale of each of these characters. Optimus Prime has always been smaller than Ultra Magnus, even though the bodies, they share the same type, they're not the same size. Whereas Megatron, even though we never saw these two characters engaged directly in the movie, he is known to be beefier, bigger, and more sturdy than Ultra Magnus. But in this case, you can see the grim determination in Megatron's face. That would be like, it's kind of like his thing, like it's emblematic of Megatron. Megatron is not a character that needs to be introduced, but at the same time, he's not a character that you need to take lightly. He's the leader of the Decepticon, and a toy must reflect that. As good as New Age Romulus is, and due to the fact that he's a gun, unlike this Megatron, the Studio Series Megatron, where Starscream never held up a tank to destroy the Autobots in the movie, you sacrifice a lot of this in this toy just to make him gun accurate or G1 accurate. You'll see that next to Ultra Magnus, New Age Romulus just doesn't compare, right? Even though he is supposed to be smaller than Ultra Magnus, there's no sense of dread. There's no sense of gravitas when you put these two characters next to each other. So why is this controversial? Again, if you're a die-hard purist and you expect Megatron to be a gun in the Studio Series 86, I'm sorry to say, but that's not happening. Even though this toy does not turn into a gun, you can see that in the robot mode, Hasbro just knocked it out of the park. You see how well he represents Megatron in his robot mode. All the features, all the prominent features that you recognize from the G1 cartoon is instantly recognizable. Same goes for Optimus Prime. Same goes for Ultra Magnus. New Age Romulus, pretty close. You know, you can see all the features to him, but again, the scale really hurt him. If you think that maybe the third party had waited just a little to release this guy, just to get an idea how big these characters would be, I would take my argument back and say this would be the perfect Megatron. But if you're wondering, even though Studio Series 86 Megatron does not transform into a gun, I would have to say this figure wins by a hair. And this is because I'm a G1 purist to an extent. For me, it's important for them to turn into a gun. But as you might have seen in other videos by now or in the toy stores, this guy actually comes with a miniature version of the gun when he's transformed. So I think that's Hasbro way of circumventing the toy gun laws without actually having to give us a toy gun. Well, that's it for this round, but I'm going to be reviewing more toy size comparison in the future. I will be looking into more Studio Series 86 because next year it will be the 40th anniversary of Transformers the movie. And we will be making more reviews, we'll be making more comparisons. And yes, we will have accessories next time just to give you an idea of what these figures look like and how they compare to their counterparts in the cartoon. Hit like and subscribe for more of these videos, and see you in the next one.